Welcome to Diverse Joy, a podcast and educational video series that infuses science, practical skills, and most of all, joy into diversity discussions. My co-host is the sparkly and decadent Dr. Amber Nelson.
That's right. And my co-host is the dazzling and glamorously golden Dr. William T.L. Cox. Well, Will, as we always start, can you tell us what is your joy this season?
My joy for this episode. So we're in January, and here in Wisconsin, where I live, it's
also our New Year's
cool.
episode and golden.
Yes, but one of the fun things that we do, some of my friends and I, almost every year, is near Madison, Wisconsin, where we live. There's a place called Lake Geneva. And they have a huge snow sculpture competition and ice sculpture competition, both. So they make these giant snow sculptures. Artists come from all over, at least all over the country, but I believe all over the world for this snow sculpture competition. And it kind of takes over the whole town of Lake Geneva, and you walk around and you see all these huge sculptures.
That's amazing.
And it's a fun little thing. It's gotten a little messed up 1 or 2 years because of climate change,
Well, that's
where it didn't stay cold enough or snowy enough. But for the most part, it does. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. Little
really
winter activity.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen ice sculptures or snow sculptures like that.
According to visit lakegeneva.com, it is an invitational with they welcome applications from champions from across the country.
Okay. It's not international, but across the country. That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. Yeah. I think the last time I saw any ice sculpture things was maybe on a cruise. But like an Alaskan cruise, they used to do some ice sculpture kind of like demonstrations and stuff. But I feel like this would be way cooler. So
very nice. Yeah.
Very cool.
What about you, Amber? What's your joy?
Yeah. Well, I think last year in our New Year's episode, I talked about how I love my Spotify Wrapped, right? Which is the music and kind of shows you what music you listened to the most over the course of the year. Recently, I've been really into quote unquote discovering new music on TikTok and being exposed to lots of new artists and folks that I've never heard of before. And I say quote unquote discovering because it's like new to me, right? It's not I'm not actually discovering these folks. These are bands and groups that have been around, but they're new to me and I have not heard them. So people that have been around for a long time, like Doechii, has been around and popular, but she had a, kind of viral moment with the song, what is it? Denial is a River over the summer. And so I was like, oh, who's Doechii? And my brother was like, Doechii's been around. So I'm like, well, she's new to me. So, groups like Panic Shack. I don't know if you've heard Panic Shack.
No.
They're like an alt girl punk rocky band from Wales, and they actually started going viral on TikTok for doing this silly little dance that they do to a Janet Jackson song, actually not even their own music. And I was like, who are these girls? And I looked them up, and it's has this the alt girl punk rock bands of like the early 2000s vibe, and love it. And another one is, what is her name? Olivia Dean. So The Man I Need, which was a pretty big song towards the end of the summer this year as well. So lots of music. And so I love going on, and I get caught in my algorithm all the time by like, oh, you've just stumbled upon a brand new, stay and listen to me for a little bit and help me like expand my audience. And I'm like, I'll be your audience. Let me listen to you. Like, this is great. So from really well-known folks like Doechii to ones that, folks had never really heard of, has been really fun to just expand my music
That's awesome.
repertoire. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, it's always nice to have new music because sometimes the same things you love listening to, it doesn't give you that same stimulation,
right?
Especially for ADHD people like us.
Yes,
and so you got to have the new shiny.
Need a little new dopamine kick. Yes.
Exactly.
Nice little vocal stim to keep listening to. Yes, I love it.
Awesome. All right. Well, today's topic is one we've touched on bits and pieces here and there, but never given its own episode.
Right.
We're going to be talking about bias in kids.
Yeah.
So we both have lots to say about it, especially Amber, who works with kids. But I'll start by kind of just briefest recap of stuff we've talked about before to make sure anyone new is on the same page. Kind of foundation of all the work we do with the bias habit breaking training that we talk about on the podcast is that we all learn biases from a very young age. Research consistently shows kids as young as 4 already know predominant stereotypes about different groups. And kids learn these things from many different places. One of the biggest culprits, of course, is the media.
Yep.
One thing I always encourage people to think about, like I think a lot of parents are really careful about what they let their kids watch, trying to avoid things that might create bias. But even if you're very careful curating your kids' media diet, you can't control everything. So you can't control commercials that come on, for instance, which often have very gendered kind of stereotypical ideas. Also, you can't control all the environments your kids are in. So there were some gender researchers who kind of have this famous story that they've shared many times. So I'm not, speaking out of school. But they tried to raise their kids in a very gender neutral kind of environment. They made their own children's books where if there was a man doctor, there was also a woman doctor, and man nurse and woman nurse, so that everything was kind of perfectly gender neutral for the input their kid was getting. So they raised these kids who were very kind of gender conscious and thinking about those sorts of things. But then their kids went to school. And so like their son, he had like longer hair. And some of the other kids at school would be like, oh, you're a girl. And he would be like, no, I'm a boy. And they'd be like, well, you have longer hair, so that means you're a girl. And the story they tell is he then pulled his pants down and pointed at his parts and was like, no, I have a penis. That means I'm a boy. Because he was very smart and understood, what these things are about. But nevertheless, the kids kept saying, well, no, you're a girl, you're blah, blah, blah. So that, kids essentially teaching each other stereotypes is how we would talk about it in our context. So that's one of the main ways we all learn stereotypes and biases. But with kids, there are a few others that we haven't talked about before that I'd like to draw attention to.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, learning via modeling, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, but from each other, especially as children, is stronger than just about anything else. That social... Sorry, C3PO just wanted to chime in with us. But the learning that kids get from other kids is some of the strongest learning that they get, even more so than from their parents and teachers even.
And in classrooms, teachers will often see things where like rumors get started. Like some kid has a mistaken belief about, I don't know, a monster or something. And all the kids kind of feed off each other and it perpetuates itself. Exactly as you're talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But another big area where kind of we look at kids learning biases is also a form of modeling, but through their parents' behavior. So we think about unintentional biases like we talk about often on the podcast. For instance, many people kind of have a little bit of a fear and anxiety reaction, white people, when encountering a black person. And kids pick up on that. So if there's a white mother and her child walking down the street, and also this doesn't have to just be white folks. It could also be black folks having a reaction to other black folks. If the mother has like maybe a little fear reaction learned through these kinds of stereotypes and biases, she maybe, shows a little anxiety, like her hand tightens on the stroller or on the kid's hand, even just for a split second. And then maybe the mother overrides it, recognizes it as a bias.
Right.
But the kid picks up on that anxiety and they notice, my mother's nervous around a certain type of person. And so then the kid learns those kinds of reactions as well.
Yeah. Well, and along with that, we also have, so there's the active piece, right? The kind of squeezing, pulling, and also silence, avoiding topics around race or different topics around gender, sexuality, things like that, or ignoring folks in life, right? So you see a homeless person, a person standing on the corner, and you just kind of hold your child and walk quickly by and don't acknowledge them. Or you see a little person and your child who is curious and they learn by asking questions or point out difference, and instead of saying yes, they're short, like they're shorter than you are, right? Or yes, that person has darker skin than you. Isn't it nice that we have so many different skin tones? Rather than saying, yes, there is a difference here, we silence or say like, no, shh, we don't talk about Bruno, right? Like we don't talk about that. We don't talk about skin. We don't talk about this, or shush your child and try to move them along because of your own embarrassment, rather than being able to kind of acknowledge it in the moment and say, yes, there is a difference here. Isn't that great? Right. But I think because of parents' own fear, their own avoidance, and silence and not saying anything is just as active and just as reinforcing as squeezing, moving, doing all these other things, or actively saying, something harmful or offensive towards another group.
Yeah. And it's it makes the topic, they pick up on the topic being forbidden.
Right, exactly.
Which also can feed into them making jokes about it because it's inappropriate and that's funny to them, which can cause more of the problem the parent was trying to avoid in the first place.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry. I was just thinking,
yeah.
I'm reminded that Snoop actually has recently or not too long ago came under fire for something along these lines, where he took his grandkids to the movie to see Lightyear, and there is a queer character in that, like a lesbian couple, and he made this whole big deal on a podcast going like, I don't want to talk to my grandkids about this. Like, how do I explain to them when they ask me questions about, how do two women have a child? And so like he just said, like, I don't want to have that conversation. I can't talk to them about this. And so he just didn't, right? But we're reinforcing it. And then he's sitting here like his own anxiety or inability to have this conversation is now reinforcing that this is not something that naturally occurs in our world, right? Like we see lesbian couples, we see same-sex couples all the time. Yeah. But your inability or discomfort or not knowing how to explain or have the conversation now is being perpetuated and put onto your kids or grandkids.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I saw someone who was reacting to that because it kind of went viral a little bit last year. But when that was happening, someone had a response that I thought was really good. They were like, okay, because he was also, part of his comments was about it being a Pixar Disney movie. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, why is something like that in a Disney movie? And this other person observed, they were like, okay, in Disney movies, there are people who steal. There are people who poison other people. There are people, and they listed all these things that like Disney villains do, or even sometimes the good characters doing bad things in Disney movies. And he's like, no one has ever complained about the evil witch trying to poison Snow White and how that might influence children. My child hasn't tried to poison me with an apple. Right. So they're being a lesbian couple. And also I didn't have to talk to them about poisoning is wrong because it was in a Disney movie. Right. So like a lesbian couple just existing, like,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of critiques around even him. It's like, okay, boo-boo, like you have built a whole career around showing all kinds of things in your videos and you can explain that, but you can't explain a lesbian couple.
Some lesbians were especially mad because he was on the TV show The L Word many years ago. And they're like, so how do you explain to your kids that?
Right, right, exactly.
And The L Word was kind of a erotic forward kind of show.
Especially for its time. Yeah. 100%. Yep.
So exposure in the media, parental reactions. Also, something that we started this whole season with talking about, kind of the in-group favoritism idea. So kids, their exposure to people, period, is going to be more likely people who are similar to them from their own family, probably similar people living in their neighborhood, and so on. And unfamiliar things can bring up negativity or anxiety. We tend to favor things that are more familiar. And so just total lack of exposure to whether it's white folks with people of color or the LGBT folks or disabilities, anything, that lack of exposure can build up into more kind of negative associations, or just the lack of associations creating negativity and anxiety. Because if you have no idea how to what someone's about or what people are like, that anxiety can come out.
Right, 100%. And our brains naturally want to put categorize things and people to make these shortcuts, and kids in particular are still developing these categories in their brain, right? And so there's a word and I'm blanking on it right now. Heuristics, that's the word. Had a little anomia, but I got there. We build these heuristics, right? And kids are still in the formation stage. And so that anxiety of the unknown, which we talked about a couple times this season, right? This anxiety around the unknown, something that's unfamiliar, they're searching for ways to confirm and disconfirm their fear or their anxiety or their discomfort or whatever that is. And however folks are responding, right? Like our parents are responding to that thing, then confirms or disconfirms their level of comfort or anxiety around a person group, whatever that is, an identity, whatever, an animal, right? Or even, and I think I've mentioned this in a season prior, but kids will fall, right? I don't know if you've seen kids fall down, and sometimes the first thing that they do is they look to their parents or they look to the adults around them, like, how am I supposed to react right now, right? Should I be crying or am I okay, right? And so depending on how you respond, the kid is going to mimic it, right? So like they're the ones that experience falling down. They should be able to tell, like, am I hurt? Am I okay? But they're still not sure. They're still building a heuristic. Like, this is a skinned knee. Do I just joke this off? Am I okay? Or do I fall apart crying, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what they're doing. They're building these heuristics. They're building these shortcuts. They're experiencing something internally, right? And then they're looking to their adults. They're looking to media. They're looking to different points of reference to tell them and inform them how they should be interpreting that mind-body connection, right?
Yes.
That we talked about last episode.
Yeah, well, and also the kind of skin knee thing brings to mind also how parents, adults give that feedback differently.
Right.
So for instance, for boys versus girls.
100%.
So more often for the boys, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, you should walk it off. You should be tough. Like pushing those gender norms, like the norm enforcement we talked about last time. Whereas girls, they maybe are more encouraged to be emotional, let them feel their feelings. Exactly. They're not necessarily expected to be tough in the same way.
Right. Absolutely.
And so you're teaching the kids these norms about how they allegedly should or should not behave.
Absolutely. And you kind of already mentioned media and things like that. Where also it's being reinforced in those like representation gaps, right? Like the reinforcement in how are boys and girls taught things different? What do the toys look like, right? Like you can see, and I might have mentioned this before too, but there are these series of books and toys, the exact same toy, even Legos, right? Like they have the girl Legos that's pink and gray and white, and then the quote unquote boy Legos that's the primary colors, right? It's the exact same freaking thing, right? But there's a pink tax, so it's this is a whole other subject, but there's a pink tax on it being marketed to girls, or like it being pink and pretty and lovely versus boys. But it's the same premise, right? But all of a sudden it's marketed different. We're saying like, okay, you can build if you're a girl, but only if it's pretty and lovely and nice and sugar and spice and all things nice, right?
Yeah. You also mentioned heuristics and kind of learning these categories.
Yeah.
There was one parent who talked to me after some of my research came out. If anyone wants to look back at season 1, the episode we talked about gaydar, that was a big area of research I was a little infamous for a while. And a parent told me this story about, so their kids started calling people gay as a derogative, like, oh, that's gay, you're gay, that sort of thing, like it's an insult. And their parents asked him, well, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And the kid was like, oh, well, being gay is someone who acts like this. And he kind of had like a stereotypical idea of like a flamboyant gay man, like walking or lisping or things like that. But when they kept asking him, he had no idea that being gay meant a man who's romantically interested in another man. He only knew the stereotype. So he actually learned the stereotype, a heuristic about the group, before he even actually knew what the group label actually meant. And kids are little sponges. They're picking up on all these things, these 100%. Cues, and so on. And so before we kind of go to break and wrap this topic a little bit, one last thing we wanted to talk about was how do we start working against this sort of thing? And really all the skills that we talk about in throughout the podcast in our skills section can be applied to kids as well. So instead of avoiding and creating that anxiety that Amber talked about a few minutes ago, teach kids that it's okay to approach and be curious and try to approach things with curiosity and humility to learn things.
Absolutely.
One of the skills that we've talked about in past seasons and we'll get to later this season is called broadening your input, one of those tools, which is basically just giving yourself more information related to members of different groups. You can do that with your kids. There was a kind of idea back when we were kids, I think, that, to try to work against your kids being racist, like make sure you take them to dinner at your black friend's house, that sort of a thing. And so as long as you're doing that, I think in a genuine way, not just using your friend to
100%.
But making sure your kid is getting exposed to and having experiences, especially positive experiences, but it can be all kinds of experiences with people who are different from them, will help work against some of these things.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's also somebody that I follow on TikTok who's doing something similar with her kid, and she's taking her to a bunch of different ethnic food restaurants and having her try different types of food as a new way of exposing her to like different cultures. And it is the people group, but it's the food, right? So often with kids in particular, they won't try something new, especially food, if it looks weird or smells weird or looks too different. And so this is just an intentional exposure, broadening her input via food and being able to now have a positive association of like, oh, wow, I really loved that Hungarian food. I really liked this type of food. That's Lebanese food. This whatever Indian food, right?
You might call that diverse food joy.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Another way, as we're closing out before our break, is so absolutely naming and not avoiding, right? It's not that we don't talk about Bruno. We talk about these things. We acknowledge and we recognize the differences. We broaden our input. And then we also, kids really connect to the idea of fairness. And so if you talk about difference and how folks are treated differently because of something perhaps trivial, like the color of their skin or their ability or anything like that, they really connect to that idea. And there was the experience, Jane Elliott, is that right? Yeah. The blue eye, brown eye experience that she did in her classroom, right?
She basically segregated her classroom by eye color and kind of treated one group of kids differently. And the kids started seeing that unfairness, especially when they were the ones being mistreated.
Right, absolutely. And this was in the 60s, I think, 70s.
70s, I think.
So this was at the height of kind of, racial reckoning, right, in our country. And so they really connected to this idea of that's not fair, right? This is a simple thing. We shouldn't be treating each other differently just based on the color of somebody's eye. So that is another one, is being able to train and teach kids via the connection through fairness.
Yeah, connecting to... Yeah, it was 1968.
Perfect.
Our producer
Thank you.
just looked that up first. So yeah, connecting things to their inherent sense of fairness. One last thing. So I have some colleagues, Scott and Divine, who have actually done this work with parents and their kids, looking at bias. And in their studies, part of what they had to do, and this was just kind of the baseline they needed to do, was get parents to kind of understand that their kids could express racial or gender bias.
Right.
And they were able to convince the parents that kids in general expressed racial bias, but the parents refused to believe that their own kids would ever express racial bias. It was a big problem because we're able to convince people that they themselves could express racial bias. And that is a big part of how we've done a lot of our research on how to get people to change. But these parents they could not bring themselves to accept that their kids might express bias. So I want to encourage anyone out there who's a parent or who works with kids, believe that your kids are probably going to express bias, are likely to, even more likely to than adults, because they've already learned the biases. They haven't learned the regulation yet.
Right.
Just believe that. I know your kids are perfect angels and they're better than all the other kids. Just not on this. All right. Just trust.
And I think part of the difficulty is that parents can acknowledge their own shortcomings as a person, and they try really hard to shift things in their kids, right? And so having that, it feels like a reflection on them that they have now done something wrong if their child is expressing a bias or expressing something. So believe that your kids may not even be coming from you, right? Again, there's all these unintentional places and spaces that they can be gleaning it from, including other kids and school.
And it's, the impact of it might have a moral value, but the fact that it happens, I mean, we wish it didn't happen, but it doesn't make your kids bad, evil, racist. It's something that they're absorbing from culture. And you're much better served by acknowledging it and addressing it than you are by pretending it's not happening.
Ignoring it. Absolutely.
So we're going to go to break now, and we will be back with story time. Welcome back from break. So now we're going to have some story time.
Yeah.
So this story came from one of the listeners, and it's from when they were a child. So this young man, he's white and grew up in a white family. And when he was in grade school, he had a best friend who was black, a black girl. And at one point, one of his parents said something to him like, "Oh, is she your girlfriend?" And his reaction,
does.
yeah. And his reaction was like, "No, she's black."
Yeah.
And he said, it wasn't an animus thing. Obviously, it's his best friend, right. But he just in his head had this idea that white people are girlfriends with white people, black people with black people.
Yep.
And there is actually a lot of research kind of in this area. It's one of the things some researchers call kids' lay theories about the world. So their understanding of how the world works and the kind of like with like idea with color and race tends to be one of those things that pops up pretty regularly. Doesn't mean they were explicitly taught that or anything else. They just kind of think that's how the world works. Right. Interracial couples are less common than same-race couples. And so a kid may have never seen that. They're like, oh, you can't do that. They're picking up on these norms, like we talked about last episode with norm enforcement, the way the world works. And the man said that his parents were actually really good about it. Like, why would you say that? Like, of course, you could have a black girlfriend or whatever. Kind of talked him through it. Didn't avoid it, like we were saying. Had a direct conversation, which is the right way to do it.
That's exactly right. Yeah, it is to say to question it and to show them like, there are lots of ways of being, right?
Yeah.
And absolutely black and white can go together, and kind of destigmatizing it, and again offering a counter narrative and expanding their heuristic, right?
So I didn't ask permission to say the person's name, but you know who you are. Thank you for sharing that story with us. And all the rest of y'all listening or watching, send in your story, send in your examples, send in your questions, because we love sharing them, and they can help other people. The things you learned from your experiences can help other people learn the same or similar messages. Yeah. So please send them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was the more negative story, although I think it kind of ended positive where they had the good conversation.
The parent did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Yeah. Yep. But Amber, you had our official positive story.
Yeah. Well, as you all know, I'm back in a clinical space from moving out of academia. And so I get to work with kids much more directly on a day-to-day basis, which is just the joy of my life. I love it. And one of the things that I've really loved is seeing how different and hearing how differently kids experience the world now than when we were kids, and how much more comfortable they are around conversations around gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, disability. Like they're so much more well-versed and have language to describe things that we just did not have growing up as millennials, not as an elder millennial. Now that I'm officially 40. So I'm recalling this instance not too long ago, actually. I had a patient who was just telling me about...
the patient was a kid.
My child patient, I think they were 9 years old. And they're describing their best friend, let's call them Ashley. And they're just talking about Ashley this and Ashley that. And I, reflected back to them, and I was like, oh, so Ashley, she comes over, and I assumed she, her pronoun. And my patient just stopped me and said, oh, well, their name is Ashley, but they use they, them pronouns and identify as non-binary. And then just kind of went along their way.
A 9-year-old.
A 9-year-old. And I was just like, wow, thank you for correcting me. And I was just sitting there and not even my child, not that I taught this child this at all, but just this proud moment of being able to say like, wow, I didn't have that kind of language when I was 9. Yeah. And being able to see this kiddo that has a lot of anxiety, actually, in general, be able to stop and correct me as an adult, as somebody with a doctor title, as their psychologist, to be able to stop me and say, actually, it's they, them, and just move along their way, and be very normal and normative and easy for them to confront me in that. So.
And it can just be a simple adjustment. You know, it makes me 100%. Think like, there are some adults who are a bit, I'll say it, a bit hateful, many of them, or just ornery or resistant, some of the others, where they just can't handle all this new gender stuff. Quote unquote new. Yeah. Non-binary and gender fluid and trans people have always existed. They're historical records.
100%.
But they're new ideas to these particular adults, and they act like they can't handle it when kids can.
Kids can handle it. It is straightforward. It makes sense to them. And it was very easy for them to just identify it for me, correct me, and them not making a big deal, and me just saying, wow, you're right. Excuse me. That was my bad for assuming because their name was Ashley. Thank you for letting me know. So yeah, I again, every day I'm working with the kids, they surprise me. And I actually had another kiddo who, again, I talk about Inside Out almost every day. And another kiddo, another 9 or 10-year-old, and they use they, them pronouns. And they're like, I don't know. I'm not sure what Riley's gender is. You said she, but Riley's the only person in the whole film that their emotions are both male and female, and everybody else's emotions when you look inside their head are all the same gender. And as their their external gender expression is. So I don't know what Riley's gender is. And I was like, you're absolutely right. We don't know. Riley's the only one. I will start just using Riley instead of using a she, her pronoun. So anyway, I just like every time I feel like I've learned more from my kids and they keep correcting me.
Aw, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Way to go, kids.
I know.
You'll make the world better.
That's right. So as we go into our question, actually, this is an interesting one, and I've seen it come up actually a few times and in a few places. And it is it true that dogs can be racist?
So yeah, this is one I've had from students for years. There actually is a bit of research on it, and there's just kind of common sense applications of other things we know from research. So one quick thing. So the word racist generally is talking about systemic oppression. Dogs aren't part of social systems. I might phrase it a little, you know. Can dogs be racially biased, right? Is probably a little, just more accurate.
More accurate.
I generally don't, I wouldn't correct any of you listening on this very much, but if you want to be precise, you know, racially biased.
Racially biased, yes.
And the answer is yes. So this—
Say more.
This is a big phenomenon. So it actually relates to what we were talking about in the first half of the episode. So, you know, dogs pick up on anxiety cues the same way that that kids do from their parents. And so if there's a person who maybe has a little bit of unintentional bias come up about a black person, they maybe pull their dog's leash a little tighter or something like that. The dog learns, this type of person makes my owner anxious, and so maybe I should be anxious or aggressive as well. Another thing is lack of exposure. Again, just like with the kids. So dogs have this sensitive period when their brains are really growing, where the best dog behavioral scientists out there say, you know, what you have to do is every single day your dog needs to meet 3 new people during this period. And they need to be different kinds of people. Someone wearing a funny hat, people of different colors, people of different sizes and genders. And like we did that with our dog, Ezra. Like we got this great book. It's called The Puppy Primer by Patricia McConnell. And it is excellent. It's from one of the top dog behavioral scientists in the world from UW-Madison, where I got my PhD. But it really walks you through amazing, perfect dog training, or as close to perfect as one can get. I don't believe in perfect. Practice makes progress is what I prefer to say. Not perfect, but it's great. And it tells you to do this. And so often people, just like with kids who their family is one race or whatnot, the dogs will only be exposed to the type of people that are in the family. They don't get this kind of exposure to different folks. And so again, the foreign, unfamiliar thing they have anxiety about. It doesn't have to be the last, but one more that I have. Sometimes people are afraid their dogs are going to be racist, even just because they've heard that dogs can be racist. And they're like, oh, I'm white. I know my dog's never seen a black person. So then they're so worried about their dog being racist, they give that dog that anxiety cue, even though the dog wouldn't have picked up or wouldn't have misbehaved otherwise. And so that's the route through the dog, maybe being aggressive towards people of a certain color.
It makes me think of 2 things. One is my own fear around certain dogs because of history. So like German Shepherds, just the history of them being used by police against black folks. I have my own like reaction, and I feel a little breed biased against German Shepherds for that. But this summer, Josh Johnson, the comedian Josh Johnson, came to Portland, and I went with a good friend of mine, and actually one of his openers told the story about his racist dog, or how he described it as a racist dog. And he goes to this whole thing about like he's this, you know, a cis-het white man from the Midwest who's like the whole circle is mostly white. And then one of his best friends is now Josh Johnson, right? Who's a black man. And his dog loves Josh and just is super familiar, runs up to him, wants to cuddle him, wants him to like love on him. And doesn't act this way towards like anybody else. But now when he walks his dog, every Black person he sees, he runs up to the Black person and acts all excited as if he was going to see Josh. And the comedian is going like, oh, it's not Josh. Like, no, like it's not all Black people are the same. Not all Black people are Josh Johnson. So it's kind of the reverse. But yeah, he was like, yeah, so my dog is the kind of racist that you want. And I was like, okay.
Oh, that's adorable.
But even the dog, right, has learned these associations with like, okay, this Black person, I love this Black person. Maybe you will be this. I will love you too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You will be my friend and I will love you.
That's so cute.
Yeah. So, Will, what is our habit-breaking skill today?
All right. So for today, our habit-breaking skill is something called self-fulfilling prophecy. So we've talked a lot through the season and in previous seasons how these kind of stereotypes and biases can guide our expectations. Maybe an expectation that, say, a Black man is going to be aggressive might give us some of those anxiety, fear responses we've been talking about today. But very often, those expectations that kind of pop to mind, maybe even slightly outside of awareness some of the time, we end up acting in ways that gets the other person to respond the way we were expecting them to act because of our own behavior, not because of anything about them. Our own ideas become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah. There are many, many examples of this. It's been studied for decades and decades and decades. But one of the big ones is behavioral scientists like myself. When we run research studies, we have to be really careful what we tell our experimenters. So the person who's actually running the study. If I do something and I tell one of my research assistants who's going to be interacting with people who are in my study, if I'm like, oh, people in group A, they're going to smile a lot. Like we think they're going to be the friendly ones. That'll get my research assistant to maybe start off smiling more, right? To then it'll get them to smile more, and then people will smile back at them. So they have this idea that people are going to be friendly, and they make it happen. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing that we know to watch out for, but it happens in so many different ways. I was giving our training to a group of probation officers, and one of them identified a way this might play out for them. So in this district or whatever, the probation officers, they had a policy that said, they have to assess people's recidivism risk. Right. So this is someone who has been convicted of a crime, and they need to assess how likely is it this person's going to commit this crime again or a similar crime. Well, the policy was after they say, I think this person is highly likely or not very likely to commit a crime again, the policy said they had to tell the person what their assessed rate was. That's good. I want you to think about that.
That's really good. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm saying that's bad.
Oh, no, actually, I think it's good that they have to tell them.
Oh, no.
No? Okay, okay.
No,
I'm gonna hear what you're saying, and then I wanted to all say why I say it's good.
It also might be what you're about to say is why they had the policy.
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine you're this person who has been convicted of a crime. Yeah. You're a probation officer who's the person you're working with to, be a productive member of society or whatever. Says, I think it's highly likely that you're going to commit a crime again.
Right.
So then, you go and let's say you have some of your old friends who are a bad influence or whatever, and they're trying to get you to get involved in the carjacking or whatever the crime is. And you're kind of on that cusp of making the decision. And you're like, my probation officer believes I'm going to do it anyway. They already think I'm going to do it. Having that information pushes you a little bit over to be more likely to do it because my probation officer already thinks it's going to happen.
Interesting. Okay. Well, what I was thinking was the idea that what happens anonymously, right? Like if we do things anonymous, we kind of lose some of the things that might stop us, right? So I think my initial thought was if we tell them from an examiner's perspective, they're more motivated to have an accurate assessment to have to tell them why. But
you were thinking So you were saying it's good for the probation officers to have to do that. Oh.
But I do hear like, okay, there is that self-fulfilling prophecy. If somebody's expecting that I'm just gonna like be out here committing crimes, then why should I be trying?
Yeah. So I mean, this is excellent because it brings up a different point about all the skills we learned.
Yep.
And I usually say this later, but let's say it now. We want everyone to apply them thoughtfully and wisely. Right. They aren't easy answers.
Right.
They are things that for us all to work on. So it's not just one way or the other. So this is a good example of that. So we can think like, how could they have the probation officer have that accountability,
right,
while not putting in the perpetrator's heads,
right,
that they're gonna commit a crime again. Mm-hmm. It's like tying it back to kids. When we first talked about self-fulfilling prophecy many like years ago now, you brought up like telling your kid they're naughty.
Right.
And I feel like this is the adult version of that. You start getting in, the kid starts seeing, well, I'm a naughty kid. My mom always says I'm a naughty kid. And so then they act more naughty.
Exactly.
So how do we resolve it? I would say for that, don't make it the policy that they tell the recovering person, what's the person who's out of jail now, what their thing is, but maybe they have to work with the supervisor and say, this is how I came to this decision, but not planted in their person's head.
Right. Well, and also, how can you communicate to the person about how you want to support them be successful? Yeah. Right. Rather than saying you're gonna fail.
Exactly. I think you're gonna fail.
Right. And rather than saying I think you're gonna fail, say like, here's the ways I want to help you succeed.
Exactly.
Right. And often we talk about how we don't we don't avoid avoidance, right? But we don't want to tell people what not to do. Correct. Because then we've pulled away. So we want to tell them what they can do,
it's
right?
It's about that approach.
It's the approach. Exactly. We keep coming back to it. Exactly. It's our theme. But it is that approach. So we're telling them what they can do. So rather than this negative self-fulfilling prophecy, we can flip it on its head and give them a positive self-fulfilling prophecy by telling them what they can do to be successful.
And this group of probation officers. So, this is at one of my trainings. One of them brought this up as an example, and we had a conversation about that policy. Because, it was mandated that they had to do this. And I was like, I could see a lot of ways that's wrong. Yeah. What we were talking about is, orienting them to all the resources that they had. And so if they think the person's a high risk, connect them more to the support groups and things like that. So they can behave differently based on the assessment without telling the person.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One last quick example. This was early days of, early to mid days of us developing the training. We did this with a bunch of graduate students, and we had some music graduate students. So in the music program at UW-Madison, teaching piano or violin or whatever. And they talked about a way this came up for them. Those programs are relatively small. There aren't a ton of piano majors or, in a university, at least not in ours. So they kind of know all the students in the major. And the TAs at the beginning of every semester would sit and look at each other's rosters, and they would say things like, oh, well, this one works really hard. This one's really lazy. This one will work hard once you get on them about it. This one's naturally talented. Yeah. Basically setting up a self-fulfilling prophecy for every single student.
Oh, wow.
And the TA's own experience with these students could have been self-fulfilling prophecies even before that. So maybe that student was lazy in your class because they did not like you, or something you were doing was making them not take it seriously. And with the new TA, maybe they would have been really attentive if you hadn't planted that idea in their head.
Yeah.
So through explicit things like those examples were both pretty explicit, but also more subtle things or unintentional things, just the friendliness, who you approach or who you act anxious around. Right. And one of the scientific terms for this is a verbal mimicry or empathetic mimicry. People will kind of reflect back the kind of vibe you give them. This even happens with like words. Like if we start saying the word eclectic a lot in a conversation, if I'm like, oh, so eclectic, this is eclectic, blah, blah, blah. Amber will be more likely to say that word
back to you.
And there's all these cool studies on that. I'm getting a little off topic. but the kind of energy you put out can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think someone's going to behave a certain way, very often you'll act towards them in a way that brings out that behavior. So understanding how those expectations are coming up is an important way to start working against bias that might create.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll take a last break and then come back and wrap things up. Welcome back, everybody. So, as always, our big finish is our joyful recommendation, which I am sharing this time. So, this is a TV show. It's called The Afterparty.
Yes, I've heard of it. I have not actually watched it yet.
It is amazing. So, it's 2 seasons. Stars Tiffany Haddish, who I love. She's hilarious. She is freaking fantastic. Like, she can get it. I love her so much. If I hear she's in something, I'm like, ding, ding, ding. Like, yes. Also, Sam Richardson, who is also hilarious. I adore him. One of the really cool things about this TV show, so it's a murder mystery kind of a thing.
Right.
And each season is one big murder mystery. It's called The Afterparty because both like the murder in the first season and the murder in the second season kind of happen after a party. And so the party has, it's, what's it called? Like a mansion murder mystery where all the people were in the house and it's got to be one of these people.
Right.
And basically, Tiffany Haddish's character is interviewing them all. And the way she likes to talk about it is she tries to get people's minds stories. Yeah. So each episode is from a different character's perspective. Cool. And it's done in a completely different genre. So like one of them, like in their minds, they're in a romantic comedy. And so the whole episode, once they're telling their story, is like the meat's cute and this and like it's all cute. Yeah. One of them is more of a horror thing. One of it's more noir. One of them's like a quirky Wes Anderson style thing. And so each episode is a completely different genre, completely different style. Amazing. But it still all weaves together and matches these characters' personalities in a way that helps you finally figure out who done it.
I love it.
So good. And one thing about it, like I'm an imaginative person and I often think like, oh, if I ever made a TV show, not that I have that skill set, but I had an idea kind of like that where I was like, oh, it'd be cool if you could kind of tell human stories through different genres, like the same characters, but like it's a little different than theirs. But like, what if one of them's a Western? Yeah. Although actually, maybe I think they did do Western, but like different settings and things to see, the two will they or won't theys. Yeah. You could translate that across different things. Anyway, so then when this show actually did something like that, I was like, oh,
that's so fun. Yeah. I love a good whodunit. And murder mystery is like, so I love it. I love, and especially when they're quirky and fun on top of it. Yeah.
It's so good.
I love a good Perro or Holmes or any of those kinds of things. So.
Oh, and I forgot to mention the diversity element. Yeah. It's excellent representation on diversity. They have all different racial diversity. There's main characters in every season that are from all different races. And sometimes, it's not just checklist diversity where it's like, oh, we have one Asian, one thing. Right. Like culture and their backgrounds weave into the plots in meaningful ways.
Very cool.
I just can't say enough good things.
I love it. I can't. Well, we'll have to watch it.
Yeah.
Maybe
we can watch some. Yeah. It's on Apple Plus. Check it out.
Yay. That's great. I love it.
And then our last mini segment that we're doing for a few episodes until my book comes out, just sharing. So my book, Overcoming Bias Habits, available to order now. Yay. And this endorsement, this is Police Chief Brian Chaney. He's the police chief of the city of Monona in Wisconsin. He was I'm pretty sure this is all correct, their first gay chief of police, their first black chief of police, and therefore also their first gay and black chief of police. Right. And many years ago, I gave a training for all the kind of department heads for the city of Monona. So their mayor, their chief of police, obviously chief of the fire and all the other major governmental departments. And he actually sent me an email after the training talking about how meaningful it was and good for him. And so when my publisher was asking me about past clients and, we're trying to appeal to different demographics and things, they specifically kind of mentioned maybe someone from the police. And I'm like, oh, well, I have this person who's the chief of police. Yeah. And, part of the idea was, some police officers or folks from those kind of military type professions might kind of be against or not interested in a bias book.
Yeah.
But an endorsement from one of their own might sway them a lot and be helpful. And so he was so gracious. Like, you know, you can't pay people for endorsements because that would be unethical.
Right.
They have to just agree to do it.
Yeah.
And it's a big favor. You had to read my whole book. And well, that's true of all these endorsers.
Right.
So anyway, I can't thank him enough. I don't know if he's a listener, but thank you again, Brian, if you are. Chief Chaney.
Yeah. And I have it here. I'll read it in a second, but I think that it is worth mentioning again how important and how meaningful it is to have a police chief write this, because so often we talk about bad diversity training and the law enforcement, unfortunately, is one of the places that gets the worst bad diversity training, and it turns them off. And folks come in without having good knowledge of the culture of the space. And I have a friend whose husband is a police officer and had bad diversity training come in. They kind of came in and said, every single one of you is racist. And they were like, and just completely turned them off for years, right? Like there's these long lasting effects. So the fact that you have somebody here that represents that community and that group means a lot. And he says, this book offers us a fresh and practical toolkit for understanding and disrupting bias. Its shame-free approach makes complex concepts accessible, inspiring readers to reflect and act with empathy. Brian Chaney, Chief of Police, City of Monona. Excellent and accurate. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Chief Chaney.
Yeah.
All right. I'm Dr. William Cox.
And I'm Dr. Amber Nelson.
Diverse Joy is produced by Eric Roman Binding with music by Jay Arner. Follow us at Diverse Joy on most social media platforms for extra content. If you enjoy the show, help us reach more people by leaving 5-star reviews or by recommending it personally. Word of mouth accounts for 70% of how people find new podcasts. New episodes released the first Wednesday of every month. Watch us on YouTube, listen in any podcasting app, or check us out at diversejoy.com, where you can also find additional diversity education resources, buy some incredible merchandise, wear a t-shirt, show off your support of Diverse Joy, the concept, and the show.
Amazing.
Amazing tote bags. Or donate to support the show. Diverse Joy is the official podcast of Inequity Agents of Change, a nonprofit devoted to evidence-based approaches to reduce bias, create inclusion, and promote equity. All that good Jedi work. Learn more about all our work at biashabit.com. Thank you for joining us. Now, go find your joy.
Bye.
Bye. Maybe it's a mandala effect. I changed universes again. Dang it.
You say mandala and I say Mandela. Because that's not his name, right?
That's part of the
Okay,
joke.
so that's the joke. I was like, wait a minute. Hold on. Am I in a different universe? Is it me?